Okay, we're down to the fair, so we're exactly 31 minutes behind, but I think we can make that up. So is Cammie? I don't see Cammie in the room. She must be online. Oh, there she is. Morning, Cammie. Go ahead. Just for benefit of our new people, the county fair is owned by the county. The grounds are owned and managed and funded in several ways by the county, but the fair itself, including the fair board, it's a separate organization, and even though the county, it's called the county fair, they actually do their own thing. And maybe, Cammie, you could explain that for a minute or two. We've got some new people here that may not know how that works, and then go ahead and go through your budget.
Certainly. Good morning to everyone. Cammie Von Sagern. I'm the director here at the Tillamook County Fairgrounds. And as Doug graciously said, yes, we are a county-owned facility. We basically are just the managers of these facilities. We do host the annual fair. We are a full-time, year-round facility. So we have rentals of our spaces, of our buildings. We offer a lot of community events. We do a lot of community support programs. 4-H FFA programs are allowed here on the grounds. They're kind of one of the biggest reasons why I feel that we are here, is to support our youth and our ag, promote traditions of Tillamook County in all of our decisions and everything that we do, not just at the fair. So like I said, we're here open 24/7. And we are open for rentals as well as community events. Currently, we do not receive any general funding. We are, as Mary Faith had described about the parks, we are self-funded. We do receive some TLT grant funding, which is amazing. We had a study done in 2016 of our facility, which is our master plan, and it did outline a lot of deficiencies in these aging buildings and structures. So we are slowly taking that approach of working on projects as they can. And you'll see in our budget, we have received grant funding through the county's process. We also receive our $250,000 allocation. And then we started a reserve fund last year for building projects so that we could be putting aside some of our own money to help in all of these projects that are coming up.
Keep talking, no questions so far.
Okay. I wasn't sure if we're going to put the budget up on the screen or if I need to pull it up on my screen or.
We got it. We'll get it up. So Cammie, can you talk about the capital expenses you have coming up part of this year and next year, the bigger projects that are finally moving forward?
Yes, yes, and that's what I was doing this morning. And I will say thank you, Sean, for reminding me I was presenting today. We have started our big West Power project. I think it's been multiple years. We won't tell you how many years this has been in the making, but it has finally actually gone through the entire process. The contracts have been awarded through the commissioner's approval. They started actually digging today. So that project is starting to bring us new 3-phase power from the college towards the east into the fairgrounds. And this is one of 2 projects that will kind of help complete the west side. Some of that is taking down overhead power lines that are very dangerous. This is all in cooperation with our Tillamook PUD partners, and we will be bringing in that new 3-phase power, putting in additional vaults. It will give us the ability to expand facilities if we need to in the future, which means that we can bring in more events and host more things that will generate funding. And then we have other projects that we have going is our sewer water, I call it sewer water mitigation. It is where we have our rainwater flowing into our sewer system. And that has been a 3-year conversation and project, getting that started, identifying where the faults lie, how that happened, how do we rectify it? And it ties into where does our water flow now? And then how do we correct that issue? We also have to be thinking about the FEMA project that is going on the fairgrounds property, because that's where our water runoff will eventually be directed to. Excuse me. And then we also have the beginnings of our main dome building, which is one of our oldest structures. And we are looking at doing some engineering, getting someone to come in and identify the structural components that are immediate structural needs. We've got some beams that are failing. We have a roof system that is failing. And so we're looking at getting just the preliminary plans on how to start correcting some of that and moving forward. Those are our three main focus areas.
So as Cammie said, the fair is completely self-funded. It generates a fair amount of revenue, both at the fair and then a lot of special events. And tonight is the monthly fair board meeting, although I think you said it's a work session. So what I have to ask you, is the work session at the fair, is that where you talk about stuff, or would you hand me a shovel if I came out?
Well, a work session is actually just the talking about planning a new event, talking about some of the other things that we have going on, trying to pinpoint who's doing what, where, why, and how we can get these things accomplished. So we're not actually talking about fees or making contracts and decisions that way, or adopting budget items. So it's just a
Well, thank you.
planning session.
I'll come out and sit in on that as the liaison. So
Okay.
let me ask our committee then. Well, let me mention for our new individual here, MJ, that this county fair has quite literally been rated among the 10 top fairs in America. And that includes the Ohio State Fair, the Iowa State Fair, and a few others that have been noteworthy over the years. Now, I think that was by USA Today and a few years ago, but we have some of the most unique events, the Pig and Ford races. I don't know if you're aware of that. So Cammie, are we the fair, is it going to be the 100th, or have you taken that subject up yet?
We actually had a meeting and had a discussion. So next year in 2025 will be the 100th anniversary of the Pig and Ford.
So that's not what the library said based on their research. So
Starting in
I guess I'll
1925.
let the fair board sort it out. I don't know, Commissioner Bell, you were there a long time and
In
you're
your
the
museum.
library. What do you know about that?
Well, I'm not the keeper of all historical records, but I think there has, what I've heard is that people are counting it differently because of during COVID when we didn't have the event. So that makes it a little bit trickier. But if it actually started in 1925, I think the 100th year should be next year, 1925.
Okay, well, there was also, according to the library people, it was suspended during the war years for 2 or 3 times as well, but so whatever, I leave that up to the fair board, but we have a Pig and Ford event. And I don't know if we talked about that before, but that you have. Okay, well, it's the only one of its kind in the world, maybe, but for sure in America, I guess. And anyway, okay, so what else on the budget do we need to know?
Well, I'll let you so starting off, we do have a carryover of 1.1 million and change, which is higher than in the years past. And some of that will be because some of these projects that we actually have set aside funding for, or using funding, are going to carry over between one fiscal year and the next. I had about 585,000 between fair and off season that I am not spending. So that's where the biggest, portion of that money is coming from. We're not just sitting on a bunch of, cash. We are spending it. It just happens that it's taking a little bit longer. So I think our budget is, again, fairly consistent with years past, little bits of increases here and there. I will say for the fair, our main revenue is in admission, in our sponsorship, and our advertising. So those are basically the ways that we make our money. We've obviously allocated in these revenue line items like pari-mutuel receipts, $260,000. That is money that comes in and then it goes right back out again. So I don't actually make money on all of these different line items. And then I guess space fees or vendor fees, we do make a little bit there as well. But that is basically our biggest revenue generation is sponsorship, admissions, a little bit in parking, a little bit in vendor fees. Otherwise, we don't take percentages of the people who are here. We don't take percentages for any of the food items. Our concerts are all free. Entertainment is all free. So we do that to keep our costs at a minimum to our community and still be able to put on the best fair in the United States. So that's really pretty same. I mean, our revenue stream is about the same from year to year. We do have a little bit more in our costs, but again, our state funding has been the same every year. We did actually just receive, which we thought was going to be about 81,000 from a House bill that was passed, and we actually received 94,000. So that'll be an extra little bit of money that we have to spend for this following year. I can't really say that anything else is going to change. Our local community funding, if we get our TLT at 250,000 again, that will go to the next project. We figured if we applied, it would be another 10,000 if we went for some type of a tourism grant or a PUD grant. So that's where that 260,000 comes in. And then all of our revenue coming in from all of our buildings, excuse me, concessions, all the things that we do throughout the rest of the year is pretty much about the same. We added in a little bit of extra because we will probably be adding one more event that the fairgrounds actually hosts. So we will be generating a little bit more revenue that way. Our skating admissions is up considerably. Our skate operator had a full-time job. This last year, she retired, and so she's able to offer her services more often. So we will see an uptick in our skating rink being operated, which is going to be great for the community. We get calls on that every single day. So we'll be able to offer some of those services to them. And that is our revenue. I will tell you that the fair operates right now with one full-time office staff. I had another full-time office staff, which I will be replacing here in the short term. So we operate with myself, 2 staff members, 1 full-time maintenance, and temporary another part-time maintenance. And we operate that way year-round until fair time, when we bring in some temporary hires to come and help us with the fair itself. But otherwise, we are a pretty slim staff for as much as we do, and we try to pay them as much as we can, and hopefully keeping up with the time so that we can keep our employees with us for long term. The only other significant change, I think, let me look at my notes really quick, in our expenditures, is in our non-capital equipment. We have budgeted 18,000. We were 12,000 last year. And some of those items will be increasing the items that we have to use in our facilities. For instance, we were able to get some stage pieces. We need to upgrade and open another building. So we need to get another set of stage pieces. That's going to cost us around $6,000 to $8,000. We lumped in all of our chairs as one item. Our chairs are old, they're metal, they're ugly. People who want to use them for banquets and facilities have been renting them outside instead of using ours. So we would like to try to upgrade those. So that's why that line item has gone up, I would say considerably. Repairs and maintenance, same kind of a thing. We have a lot of repairs that we do here. We go out to bid, we find the locals that can help us out. Some will give us discounts. But we've got failing buildings all the way around. It's not really a capital project, but we've got roof systems, we've got beams, we've got tin replacement on the buildings, even drinking fountains. There's a lot of things throughout the grounds that need to be repaired. So this is where we find it's rapidly getting, as our money flow is coming in, we're able to spend those funds on doing the things we should do to keep our facilities in working order. So we're trying to maintain the buildings that we have and then put our capital projects into the buildings that really need the most repair. So there was an increase of 50,000 in our repairs and maintenance. Other than that, I think we're pretty good. I think we already discussed what our capital projects would be. That 815,000 is just a culmination of all of the grant money coming in, the TLT funding coming in, our money being put into those projects to make them finally come to fruition.
Questions? Yes. Yeah.
Tammy, am I looking at this correctly that you're estimating to have an ending fund balance of $61,500?
The unappropriated?
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
Is there a target carryover that the Fair Board tries to hit?
No, for me, that unappropriated ending balance is just a part of the balancing of my budget. There's no real plan. We have a $40,000 contingency that we roll over every year for the fair in case something happens. We're putting $100,000 in those transfer outs into a new building fund. We have $5,000 that goes into a vehicle fund. So we have those things built into our budget, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, it is. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
You know, you should also understand that the employees are not county employees. So they don't enjoy the same benefits. They have a different situation. And Cammie not only runs the fair, she also does the payroll and a few other things over there. So it's pretty much a grassroots organization, but it might be the most notable piece of history in the entire county, my opinion only. I don't know.
I agree with you. And, since we're singing Cammie's praises, you get a lot done with just a few people. Just the other day, somebody was asking me like, how many maintenance people does the fairgrounds have in total? And I said, one. And they were dismayed, like one guy takes care of all those buildings and grounds. I said, yeah, just one. So, really that's a great example of what you accomplish with very little money.
And we always talk about the fair board being a working fair board. And I think that a lot of that's maintenance and those things, to Doug's question of, do I bring my shovel? There's just an amazing core of volunteers that Cammie keeps inspired and motivated, that do a ton of work out there.
Thank you. We do. And over the years, I would say in the last 6 years, we've really been trying to anyway, spend a little bit more money on employees and trying to get someone actually in here to help us so that as our volunteers age, we now have to start paying for a lot of those services that we didn't have to before. And I recognize that, everybody's at burnout, and it's just hard sometimes. So we do try to allocate money where it should be going so that we can pay for it when we need it. Instead of, coming up short and being in dire straits. So I am very fortunate. I feel as though we have a really good budget, a really solid budget, that we can start actually doing things ourselves, as well as relying on the county to help us with our capital projects.
Yes, MJ.
Is there any mechanism for, a tax deductible donation?
So
Like a
we do.
foundation, or people can donate and they can hand it off?
Yes, so we actually, and some friends of the fair, I would call them, have started a nonprofit, which is the Tillamook Fair Association. and they will be starting to do things on our behalf. Of course, we don't direct them on what to do, but their main focus is to raise funds to help the fairgrounds and help with programs throughout the year. And that's about a 2-year-old organization that's just starting to kind of come together and have meetings.
So
And
is it
that-
advertised on your website?
No, not yet. Once they are formulated and feel comfortable with having people contact and ways to donate, then we will actually put that on our website as well.
Okay, I think we've covered the fair. I would just note, having become pretty familiar with the fair over the years, is there will be some significant capital needs even beyond what was pointed out here, because those buildings are old. They're mostly wood. There may or may not be some structural issues, roof issues, and things that just happen over a period of time. And so I would expect over the next few years, there might be a big number, just like there was when there was grandstands about 12, 14 years ago. The grandstands, the county was told that if you don't replace them, we'll condemn them. And so they were replaced. And they had a cost, as I remember, $750,000 spread over 10 years at no interest from one of our local banks that said, we'll help you out. And that's paid off, has been now for some years. So, and the other thing, just for your benefit, MJ, when Fair Week rolls around, it's not a good time to go shopping in Tillamook because most of the businesses close for the fair. I mean, this is a big deal. It really is. Okay, thank you, Cammie. I think we're
Yeah.
good, and I'll see you
Thank you.
tonight at your work session.
Thanks,
Thank
Tammy.
you very much.
Tammy.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, back to Rachel, and she can take us maybe all the way up to lunch here if we do it right. So back over to you.
Hey, thank you. So parking fees are adopted by board order for parking and use and campground fees are adopted by board order, and they're ran through the Parks Department. Up until January of 21, there were no parking fees at the Cape Kiwanda parking lot and the Pacific City turnaround, which is a very small, mostly graveled, sandy parking lot by the Beachy Bridge in Pacific City. At the end of on the south end of Cape Kiwanda Drive. So at that time, because the Kiwanda Corridor project was ramping up, and it's a project that was in the making for many years, went through a lot of different planning to the goal is try to mitigate the impacts that visitors were having on the area, develop plans for infrastructure, and retain the livelihood of the residents in the area. And so out of that came the Kiwanda Corridor project, which is a multi-strategy project that entails reconstructing the Cape Kiwanda parking lot, relocating Webb Park to a northeast county parcel to have a new campground, and then rebuilding the existing campground footprint for a parking lot, a multi-use path from the Cape Kiwanda parking lot to Bob Straub, which would allow for a variety of uses for people to move throughout the area, developing the Jensen property that the county acquired for parking lot, day use area, and completing the development of the Nestucca Valley Community Alliance Skate Park, which is on leased property owned by Tillamook Lightwave. So this big project came from the planning stage to a project concept plan. And when concurrently as the fee was getting established, it was decided that the fees coming out of the Cape Kiwanda parking lot and the Pacific City turnaround would go into this fund. So the Pacific City Woods Parking Management Plan, which is what our plan was at the time called, only supports efforts in Pacific City regarding tourism destination management, basically, and infrastructure construction, is solely funded through revenues from the Cape Kiwanda parking lot and the Pacific City turnaround and any grant funds that come in. So that's the genesis of this fund. Going through the fund line items, we're projecting a beginning fund balance of $147,000. The revenues from annual fees and the daily fees are here. The way the annual fees for days and parking fees are in the park system is there's a lot of parks, facilities throughout Tillamook County, and they are prorated. They're prorated to go into this. So if somebody buys an annual pass that you can use throughout the system, a portion of it goes to this fund for the Cape Canaveral parking lot and the Pacific City turnaround. So we're averaging, it was a little lower. The days fees were lower last year because our parking spaces were impacted by construction. But I've projected, I think it's a conservative increase of around 350,000 for next year. There's a new line item for utilities. We will have EV charging stations at the Cape Canaveral parking lot, and so there'll be some additional revenues that we'll be receiving through that. And then there's a transfer that we saw on the TLT 121 fund that was a project that goes into this fund. That's the 715. So the 715 was in the allocated projects. 715,000 was in the allocated projects that you saw in Fund 121. That's on the revenue side. On the expenses side, we have a new position. The 38,400 is the new Parks Maintenance and Operations Tech 1. We do not have that position on board yet. That position, in conversations with Public Works and the Parks Department, is a new FTE that we need to maintain the facilities at the Cape Canaveral parking lot. The restrooms are going to be bigger. There's going to be garbage receptacles throughout the facility. And given the amount of use of the area, our analysis determines that we actually need a full-time person there. And so one FTE combined with existing staff from parks that are already servicing the parking lot, that will cover what we think we need on a 7-day week basis. And it will kind of ebb and flow as seasons, seasonal use changes, and in lower times of use, that staff person could help support services needed at Webb Park or other areas in Pacific City. So that recruitment, because it is a new position, was approved by the commissioners a couple of weeks ago, and it is being advertised right now and will close in a week or two. And the goal is to have that person on board July 1. So there's no cost projected to come out of this fiscal year, but it's budgeted for next fiscal year.
Rachel, can I interrupt you just a second? I want to explain to anybody who's watching or to our new person as well. One of the reasons that this is concentrated more in Pacific City is it's unincorporated. And we have 7 cities in Tillamook County, but they're all north, well, starting here in Tillamook and then going north. There are no incorporated cities in the south end. And so the county is, lack of a better term, almost a de facto city manager of South County. Now, on the flip side of that, the majority of the money that's derived from these sources, including back to the TLT and others, comes out of that part as well. So I've heard over the years, and I know the others have as well, that why are you putting all this money in South County? Well, that's part of the reason. If you go back a few years, there was a fair amount of money went to the north end, but the money comes from there, and then there's certain obligations that end up in the county's lap simply because there is no city government down there. And so I think that we all need to understand that. So thank you, Rachel.
And Rachel, just one slight change from what you said. You were talking about the new full-time employee and as a Parks Maintenance Tech 1, but that was changed through HR to a janitor laborer. You're welcome.
The second position there is a part-time position. This is our parking ambassador. This was our solution, which is working out fabulously, to have somebody in the parking lot to help with enforcement. Our sheriff's office is limited on what they can provide for service, and there's obviously other competing priorities. And we've hired our parking ambassador, and she's doing a great job of being our eyes and ears on the ground, talking to people, providing some education outreach on what to do in the area, and it's helped. You can see an uptick in the amount of days passes that are paid in the parking lot. So that has been going great. She's been with us, I think, about 2 years. Moving down to materials and services. The contracted services, and there's a detail in your narrative. We help support the PC shuttle, the trolley that you may have heard about that runs in the area from May through September during peak months. It's going to be reduced because of increased costs, and they are having a horrible time getting drivers. So, but we have committed to 25,000. We've been paying 25,000 the last couple of years to help the shuttle service. We have our South Tillamook County Destination Manager. She helps with outreach in areas. She does it similar to some things that Nan does on a global level, but focused in Pacific City. There's some costs in there for Consor, which is our consulting engineering team who's been leading all the work on the Kiwanda Corridor project. So as we're still in this construction phase, there's some contracted services for our Consor team. And then we have a contingency of 56,000, which is a contingency that is just a placeholder to balance out the budget. The revenues are projected to be what they are. I have costs, and I have costs that I don't have identified that I need. I'm sure they will come up, but that's a contingency of about $56,000 to round out the budget. Repair and maintenance, building and grounds, 45,000. We have not had a budget for that in the past because we haven't had this brand new parking lot to maintain. As the construction's been going along and as it wraps up, we will have an operations maintenance manual for all of the new infrastructure that's being installed there. There's an extensive stormwater management system. And so the $45,000 represents sand clearing, stormwater maintenance, repair of amenities as they get vandalized, maintenance of the EV charging station, maintenance of the pump station. It's our estimate at this point from the engineer of what we would need to spend to maintain these new facilities in the first year. The intercounty transfer to parks, 132,000. Parks, prior to the fee being enacted at these two lots, the Parks Department solely managed the facilities. We did not want to lose that. They are the best ones of the county to manage those facilities. And so when we created this new fund, the arrangement was made for them to continue to do what they're doing, but we will pay you out of this fund. So the Parks Department gets reimbursement for all of their work, spending time at the Cape Kiwanda parking lot and the Pacific City turnaround. So there's an increase because there's going to be more work to do. The new person will be working under the leadership, I think, of the Parks Department. And so, and there'll be a vehicle that they're going to be using. There's some additional utilities, all of the costs for electricity, sewer, water, servicing the restroom, all of that comes in this bill from the Parks Department. So there's an increase in utility costs in the 132. The infrastructure construction, 723,000. That is the projected balance of what will be needed next fiscal year to complete the construction.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The 723,000 in infrastructure and construction is the balance of what is projected to be needed to pay the construction contractor to complete the construction at the Cape Kiwanda parking lot.
And you're coming up with no unappropriated ending fund balance because of that the project's going to be completed?
Yes. And I never budget that. I don't fully understand that number. I never budget that, but that ends up as an actual.
Or the beginning fund balance, if they're funds that you don't use for the next.
I assumed that was carried over because it was going to be completed in this next fiscal year, but because it's going to be completed, you don't have to carry it more over to just a minor thing, and I may just be looking at the wrong number. It says transfer from TLT facilities 715,300, but in the other account, it's unless I got the wrong number here, 725,000. There's a 10,000, a 121, and a 593.
It's not the 10,000.
Okay.
The 10,000, the Kiwanda Corridor project 10,000 is not part of a transfer. That is just in 121. And that is for, when we acquired the Jensen property, there were 4 landlocked, very small parcels. We've acquired 2. And that is funding to acquire the outstanding one. I'm
Okay, so
still
that's not a
negotiating.
transfer.
But it is not a transfer,
Okay.
no. So I don't know if that does the math. But the 121, unless there's an error here.
No, that adds up. It's
Oh,
just
it does, okay.
10,000.
Yep.
So Lisa, I have one small thing that I'm sorry I haven't talked to you about this before now. I apologize. But last week at our park staff meeting, the maintenance tech staff, we were talking about planning for maintenance of the new parking lot. And they explained to me a bunch of technical stuff that I took careful notes on and that I haven't shared with you yet. But the upshot of it was because the way the parking lot was designed with the restroom forward, the restroom at the dune, now there's a new pump station. So the restroom is moved toward the dune. So there's a new pump station that will have to pump backwards. And the maintenance tech staff said, we're not qualified to work on that. So inevitably, that's going to have problems. We need to get somebody on board a contractor on board to learn that system now, who's going to be the person that we call when that system has problems or fails, because we won't be able to do it. And of course, when it doesn't work right, it's going to be like, the 4th of July.
Right.
So, so I don't know what that additional cost will be, but it's something, I was glad to have the conversation because it's something that parks just won't just be able to jump in and fix.
Correct. We were not expecting that they would be qualified to do that because we know they don't have the individuals on staff, and that's in the repair and maintenance budgets.
More questions from anyone?
Nope.
Okay, well, you want to go on then down to the board? Weapon board and all that?
Yeah, so now we enter the round robin of random budgets that are all unrelated, but they're within my purview. We'll start with the BOC budget in the general fund department 1100. So the Board of Commissioners office has the three elected commissioners, myself, the chief of staff, a salaried county council, executive assistant, and board assistant. So those are the salaries that you see. Computer software and licensing has gone up in the last couple of years. That's our new agenda management and meeting management system, Civic Clerk. Printing and advertising is largely comprised of call for bid advertisements, requests for proposals. I'm also the county contract officer, so as we're doing a lot of contracts, ones under my purview are advertised here. Public relations, 3,200. We pay KTIL to broadcast our community update call. Memberships and dues, 39,000. That is, we have 13 memberships and dues line items between myself, county council, others, and our other staff and the commissioners. And I have a detailed breakdown of that. It's not requested in the narrative, but I do have it. But there's a lot of entities that our office is a part of.
And we're talking general fund here now, in case you didn't catch it. We've gone from parks and all the special. This is where there's not a lot of supporting revenue. This is tax dollars.
Yep. Travel, training, and mileage. This is also another pretty big ticket item. There's a lot of places that we go for meetings and conferences and participate in the entities and those meetings that are reflected in the memberships and dues that we're a part of. I have a detail, that detail I think was provided in the packet. Yeah, so we had a work session on this year. It's also a little bit higher because we're in an election year, and there is a chance that we could have 2 new commissioners on staff. And one of the ticket items is the AOC County College that new commissioners attend. So if we have 2 new commissioners, if they wanted to both attend that conference, then that would be a budget that, or a line item that we need to budget for. Otherwise, I won't go through the detail, but there is a travel budget that is included in the packet that describes the breakdown and mileage. Contracted services, the detail for that is in the narrative. That is mostly comprised of Jane Scott video production. So she videotapes the Board of Commissioners meetings every week. Sometimes when we have special meetings, she'll come in and record those too, but that's mostly her. And legal services.
If you think legal services is too high, you talk to the guys in the theaters at the back of the room there.
I did ask Mr. Sargent to attend today, as well as Mr. Stevens is I think on the call. So our legal services has continued to increase. This year we had a budget of 172,000. We are projected to go over by about 30,000. So Joel Stevens is in the salaried budget line item, and Mr. Sargent is he's former salaried county counsel. He's been a contractor for the last couple of years. And so between him and Mr. Stevens, they represent our county counsel. So Mr. Sargent's time shows up in the legal services line item. And we are projected to be at about 31,000 over by the end of the fiscal year for legal services. When I asked them to prepare a proposed budget, we did have a proposed adopted budget for Mr. Sargent's time this year at 135. They proposed to go up to 145, so it might still be a little low. So I am expecting some conversation today about that, about legal services in the BOC budget, but that's the data point.
I will tell you, I visited with Mr. Sargent the other day, and his hourly rate that he bills the county is roughly 35 or 40% of what most attorneys are in Oregon right now. So, you know, I guess we could say we have a bargain, and he's been associated with the county for what, 35 years, most of his adult life, I believe, right, Bill?
Since 91, Commissioner. 1991, I was contracted to begin county council work for the county.
So we, in my opinion, and others can speak for yourselves, but I think we've got a bargain here. And he not only has the history, but he's quite an acknowledged expert in municipal law. So I think we've got a bargain there. Now, one of these days, he's probably going to come in and say, I quit, I'm going fishing or something, but it is.
A week. I still get it back in here.
I'm happy to explain my part of it if the board ever wants to hear from me. That's fine.
Yeah, we're basically that's the end of the budget. The 2,000 is the copier lease. Regarding the legal services, I would say as a whole for the county. So we have 2 county councils out of the Board of Commissioners office. One is salaried, one is contracted. And then other departments also use legal services in special cases. So if there's investigations or union negotiations, that typically comes out of HR. The community development department, especially when we were going through short-term rentals, they use legal services. I've used legal services for some of our property negotiations that are budgeted out of the BOC office. So a piece of our legal services countywide is in the Board of Commissioners office budget.
And you all can imagine the budget committee, the county is sued pretty regularly or a party of something. And so you have to retain a litigator depending on what the issues are. And so what you see in these 2 is not the total legal expense. The rest would come under some contract in one of the departments, and that's the world we live in today.
Joel on the screen, I think it's worth noting that Joel's salaried position is 32 hours. And then Bill is also part-time. And I agree with what Doug was saying, that it's just distressing but true that we've become such a litigious society that we have to spend a lot of money on legal counsel just to defend ourselves and do risk analysis. And we've been talking recently about, we spend an astonishing amount of time because our legal counsel has to process public records requests. And public records requests are, you know, they're public records and people have a right to request them, but it's become a movement, like a tool for people to make vast public records requests, and it just gums up our legal system, and they have to process them, and they have to do it within a certain period of time. So there are things that are taking a lot of time that, you know, we can see that, wow, that shouldn't be necessary, but it's happening. So we have to respond to it.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the question. Would we realize, and no offense to Mr. Sargent, would we realize savings if we added a full-time legal position to salary?
Well, let's give you my 33% is, I have thought about that, and that was part of when I spoke with Mr. Sargent the other day. We have now, as you just heard, a full-time salaried, very qualified attorney for 32 hours a week, and he probably spends more than that, but that's what's on the books. And then we have this individual here who comes to the meetings. In my mind, having looked at other organizations over the years, sometimes you have an in-house counsel, maybe one or two or however many, and then maybe some legal assistants or paralegals who could do some of the that doesn't require you to be a member of the bar. In other words, you could do these requests that come in for public records and a whole variety of other things. And for my part, I would like to continue to examine that, although I must say what we do now is working. It's adequate. To my knowledge, the county has not been admonished by any court for not getting something done on time. But there may be a better way of doing it, and we haven't had this conversation, the three of us. So that's my answer. You folks can speak for yourselves.
Yeah, I think this is an area we need to look at. I think as we're looking at the number of public records requests, I do find myself wondering if a paralegal could be an efficient way to address some of those pieces. I think from the Board of Commissioners, I think we've received good service. It has nothing to do with the service received, but it just has to do with the changing needs in our legal system of what's coming at us more. Is it lawsuits? Is it public records requests? Do we have the most efficient person in the most efficient chair to get it done? And I think as we go through looking at if we're going to ask everyone to tighten their belts, to tighten their budgets, this is one that we need to just look at and say, could it be designed more efficiently? And I have talked with both County Counsel Stevens and County Counsel Sargent about this and kind of requested what would a best, what would the best case scenario budget look like? And we haven't had a chance to finish that conversation to receive those documents back that I'd requested, but to really look at if we didn't have the two people that we really appreciate their work, how, if we were to step away from that and say we are designing a legal, to your point, designing a legal department for the county, what would be the most efficient and effective way to do that? And I think it's a conversation we do need to have, not necessarily saying that either one of them would need to go, but it's an analysis we should be doing to determine if we need to shift things, particularly if we are, I guess my question goes to if we are over budget this year. And so Rachel, maybe you can give me those numbers again. It sounds like we used more of Bill's time this year than we are proposing to do in the coming year. And is there a specific shift in what Bill's going to do for us that accounts for that step down of time, or are we hoping for the best?
So we had two concurrent tracks that I caught yesterday, and that's why I had them here today, because I knew this was going to come up. So they had suggested an increase of 10,000. So that's why you see 145,000 for Bill this coming fiscal year. When I looked at what we were actually projected to spend at 166, I was like, oh, maybe we don't have enough. So I think there needs to be some reconciliation there, because I don't think anything's going to necessarily change from a workload standpoint going forward. I would suggest we need to budget higher for Bill or make some other adjustment, because clearly I don't think we're meeting the mark, but I would defer to them to.
Yeah, Bill, can you talk to us about that? Are you going to do less for us?
Well, hang on just a minute. I'm going to give Commissioner Bell, you didn't really know that same subject. Could you You have thoughts on that? Then we'll go to Bill.
Well, sure. I agree that we should be looking at everything in this process. I mean, that's what that's what we're doing here. We should be looking at everything and I am interested in Bill and Joel's assessment of what would be the most efficient, process moving forward. And I agree that we value and appreciate them both entirely. And is there, are the things that we're doing the best use of your time? When I think about public records requests, I think, wow, really? Is that the best use of your time? Not, but you obviously have to do it. So, yeah, so I think all of that is fair game. When I think about, in terms of looking at it, talking about it, when I think about the efficiency, like what we absolutely need, the only thing that occurs to me that we might not always need is somebody in person in our meetings. Don't take offense, Bill, because I enjoy having you in person at our meetings. But, honestly, if it's not executive session, we don't call on you very often for legal expertise. And we could be, we could have Joel online in our meetings, multitasking. And so, but that's the only place that I think like, maybe maybe we don't entirely need that. And that's, not very much. It's maybe 5 hours a week.
Yeah, to get to the numbers, it's 145 for me and that's based on 25 hours a week times $120 an hour. So that comes up to 3,000 a week and I multiply that times 50 weeks and it comes to $150,000. And I thought, well, based on this last year where I was at 135, it's going to be more than that. But and I just had the pleasure of coming back from my tax man. And I can tell you that the county W-1099 me last year for $147,000, 147, and change. So I presume, Sean, some of that came from money that you had to give to me because I went to AOC or something. Because I surely didn't bill the county 147, 110 and 10 cents. But so that's fairly close for a year's time, of what we budgeted for a calendar year. And then I looked at my past 9 months and that came to $108,000 and almost $109,000 for the first 9 months. And that's roughly really close to $12,000 a month. So I multiply 12 times 12 and I come up with $140,000. So I think personally that's really a good estimate. And I think, yes, I'm going to be over budget this year, but I don't think I'm going to be over budget by more than about $10,000 or $12,000 based on the number.
Keep in mind that number, he's an independent contractor, so he's paying his own social security and all that. So the burden of costs and medical and retirement and all that is not in that number, nor would it be added to it.
Yeah, and so just briefly by way of background, Joel does 32 hours and I fill in as needed. I end up being a Friday person and that's typically pretty close to a full day. And if I had to come up with a time when something was going to go wrong, it's Friday afternoon. It's
Of course.
2 o'clock. So that just seems to happen. So anyway, and then Wednesday, as you pointed out, Commissioner Bill, I do appear here and that does eat up a half a day. And I know that Commissioner Yamamoto was strong on wanting a physical presence here and that's ultimately up to you. I enjoy coming, but I agree. I've sat in thousands and thousands of Wednesday meetings and I don't want to say I'm a lawn chair, but I do, I'm not called upon very often to ask, somebody will say, did you review this bill or something will come up and that's not something that couldn't be handled online. As you know, I do the foreclosure and that takes more time than you think. basically I'm just contract review, answering legal questions, do some document preparation. I work with Rachel a lot. Like for instance, on the radio bond, you can't just go out and pass a hat. It takes a little bit of thought about how we're gonna go about doing that. Rachel has some legal questions that she kicks around. So anyway, that's where I am monetarily, and that's why I came to that number.
I wonder if we could hear from Joel. I don't know that you folks have met Joel. He's in another part of the country as of the moment, but Joel, why don't you introduce yourself and speak to this subject if you would take a minute or two?
Thank you. Joel Stevens, County Counsel. I also serve as the county's risk manager. As was mentioned before, my hours were reduced a couple years ago. I'm at 32 hours. I work more than that, but that's what I'm in the books for. And Bill kind of covers the rest. The overall legal budget for the commissioner's office, you'll see is actually decreased a little bit this year. And that's in large part because a couple of large matters that the county was involved in have either resolved in the last year or are in the process of resolving. So I was able to significantly decrease our projected costs for those. It's really hard to predict future litigation. Even future, workload on an hourly basis is hard to predict. But as was already mentioned, Mr. Sargent's a great bargain. His hourly rate is very, very reasonable, as well as his background experience. So I think it's I think it's worked really well as far as having continuous coverage and with response times. I think we're well ahead of what the average is for most entities. We did have challenges in the past when it was just me, and I was at 40 hours, but when it was just me, when I would be out for leave or I had military duty, when there wasn't someone covering, the calls and emails just continued. And so it became a challenge to do, my military leave and things like that. But, I think the current process works really well. I haven't heard any negative pushback about our response times. Most of the time we're same day, depending on the matter, but workloads have increased. Public records requests are a significant part of that. I think that, there is a lot of that in larger entities is done by like a public information officer or something like that with just an attorney kind of reviewing it. I too, to Commissioner Scar's point, I continue to look at, what the best model is for the future, but in having regular contact with Bill, he's assured me that he is going to be available for for a while. And if we were to go with other outside contracted services for any of this, including even, contracting with a firm that would have an hourly rate for their legal assistants to do some of the work, like say, some of the more admin work on public records requests, I think that would still end up costing us more than what we're looking at now, or it would at least be comparable. Even legal assistants in, especially out of the valley, their rates can be close to what Mr. Sargent's charging now. So that's going to be a challenge, when we shift from that. But I think there are options out there. A lot of entities, a lot of smaller cities and counties, do rely heavily on contracted services for some of that. And there are a few I've worked with over the years because they represent some of our local cities and surrounding counties on various things. So, there'll be options available when we need to in the future when we need to transition.
Thank you, Joel. Any questions on legal counsel, either to the council or Rachel or the?
So
So
Rachel, in the next year, we will not be doing foreclosures, correct? Under the current legislation from the state, because we're not allowed to take deed to anything. Will we recognize at least a short-term savings in the coming year without the foreclosure process?
We will be doing foreclosures, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill. We will be
Well-
doing foreclosures. We will not be taking title,
okay.
which is the very last
Okay,
piece.
so we'll do all of the rest of the steps. We just won't take title.
And Commissioner Scott's incredible, because you think you could do a foreclosure in a couple of days. And you guys all deal with paperwork and litigation, and I don't know why, but it takes longer than that. And one thing, and I'll go back rooms, leave you all alone, but Commissioner Bill's point, you know, Zoom appearances are great. I understand that, but I do think that a personal relationship, a face-to-face relationship sometimes is appropriate. I'll give you one quick example. It just happened yesterday. At the health department, there's a case where a medical provider got sued, and one of the providers at the health department is the general doctor for this woman who was injured. So they wanted, the counsel for the medical provider who'd been sued wanted to take her deposition. And so she kind of wanted somebody to sit there with her when she was having her deposition taken. So I did that. And you wouldn't think, you know, that it just didn't happen in 2 hours. I wanted to look at the medical records first. And so I got the medical records, and they're like that thick, and I had to go through them, and then I had to prepare her for her deposition. But I'm convinced that she felt better about having, you know, a real live attorney there with her. And I could cite other examples, but I think that's just one recently that that's a good one that shows that it's sometimes good to have a face-to-face still in these days of Zoom and WebEx and all those sorts of things. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
thank you. Go ahead, Rachel. I've got 3 more maybe on the same subject.
Yep. So that's a good segue to the land sale fund. You don't need to bring it up. General fund, and then department 1160. So this fund supports our property management activities. When the county receives properties through tax foreclosure, there are several statutes that guide how we dispose of the property, sell it, or whatnot. And our most common way of doing that is through our annual land sale auctions, and there's a whole process around that, and we do it annually. The county is able, through that process and allowed by statute, to recoup all of our costs. And then any surplus over that is distributed through the same formula that timber revenues are distributed. So the county gets a cut, and then it goes out to the taxing districts. So, but what has changed and flipped all that on its head, which Commissioner Scar was referring to, is there was a U.S. Supreme Court case that basically it was in Minnesota. It's called Tyler versus Hennepin County, and it stated that the county this county in Minnesota had violated a woman's constitutional rights when it sold her forfeited property for more than she owed in taxes and kept a surplus. So there was a takings clause of the Fifth Amendment. So what that has effectively done is it has halted everything. There are still some counties in Oregon that are, and throughout the United States, that are selling property and have developed a process, but there's just a lot of uncertainty. So since this case, we have done nothing. We have a couple of outstanding land sale contracts for tax foreclosed properties that we've sold, and we are still keeping those revenues, but they're just sitting in a fund. So since this has turned everything upside down, we have halted our processes, and this has gone through the legislature. There's all these statutes that guide a lot of different things, as I said, with disposal of tax foreclosed properties and what we do with the revenues. And so it was before the legislature last session, and they passed Senate House Bill 4056. And basically what it said is the county should establish a process. And unfortunately, there were a lot of good bills that came before the legislature that answered a lot of these questions, you know, how much you can sell it for, what cost can the county recoup, et cetera. How do you notify prior owners, who is a prior owner? And they just washed all that away and told the counties that we need to come up with the process and we need to work with the Department of Revenue to provide that process to the state no later than September 15th, and then it will go into a future legislative session. Met with the board in board briefing last week, and everyone agreed that we should just continue to not sell foreclosed properties. So the budget you have before you is what it would have looked like if we were going to sell properties that we currently have and properties that we're going to be taking title to here. But I'm going to completely revise it, and I'll probably just have some limited expenses for maintaining properties that we currently have if something comes up. So in May, you'll see a whole new budget. So I don't think it's even worthwhile going through this budget today because it will look a lot different.
Okay.
So we are in a holding pattern, and this, yeah, so we wouldn't, if there's changes that are recommended to the state per this House bill and they go through the next legislative session, presumably those would be in effect until next summer, which is next fiscal year. So that's our prediction at this point. Questions on land sales? Probably, but we wouldn't be getting 1.2 either. That would largely be going out to taxing districts. So a quarter of 1.2 million, maybe. Yeah. We will have the land sale contract proceeds.
Do you all understand the foreclosure process in general? If you don't pay your taxes, you get 3 years in arrears, and you have 2 years to redeem. And then the county comes in and things happen, and you ultimately, and it's sold at public auction for the back taxes plus interest and certain other costs. This case in Minnesota, there was a county, Hennepin County, which is Minneapolis. Basically, they kept the money. And, you know, who knows what they did with it. And finally, the legal people caught up with them and said, you can't be doing that, which, you know, from a moral perspective, seems reasonable. You took somebody else's money.
Which
Anyway,
is what we've been
that's-
doing.
That's the short history of it. And if you follow this kind of stuff, you know, I don't know.
But statute says you can, so that's
Yeah.
what needs to be fixed, yeah.
But like she said, now it's, the foreclosure process will go forward, but there'll be no property sold until all this is legislated
out.
properly and do it.
Okay, that is all the general fund departments I have. Moving on to Fund 100, which is the mitigation fund. This fund has supported over the years watershed and mitigation projects, stream gauges. If you're familiar with the Southern Flow Corridor, wetland restoration and flood mitigation project we did a few years ago, the expenses and revenues for that project flowed in and out of here, as well as the maintenance of the Shiloh levee, which is the 1,200-foot long levee behind the Shiloh Inn, which I think has a new name now, or it's going to have a new name. And it keeps the Wilson River from eroding. It was designed to keep the Wilson River from eroding the abutments of the historic bridge that goes over the Wilson River there at Highway 101. So this year, what you see is the repair of the Shiloh levee. And I'll point you, again, this is one of those budgets where it's easier to look down below as I have the project view, and then I work it into what the treasurer needs to see for different line item categories. We will have a cash balance carryover projected. The Biz Oregon, the legislature funding are secured. So we have about $1.6 million secured through the state for the repair of the Shiloh levee. We're looking at a 25 construction repair for that. The total project cost is about 4.3 for the Shiloh levee. We do have an RFP out to hire our engineer to start the process. And so they're forecasting about 200,000 will come out of this fiscal year. So that's why you see the 4.139 as a total project cost in next fiscal year. And then that is split between building improvement, line item 3.49, and the contracted services, almost 800,000. Also in contracted services, we mow the Shiloh levee and we mow the levees at the southern flow corridor. And then we have a good cushion to cover any unforeseen repairs that are going to be needed if a culvert needs cleaned out or the levee blows out at the southern flow corridor project area. And there's a budget of about 95,000 in there, and I think that details in your contracted services. Questions? Starting to pick up the pace because I know lunch is coming. Might have a big topic to get to regarding the county annex, so. Questions? Fund,
I'm just thrilled that the Shiloh levee repairs in this. budget
yes,
has
me too.
Actually.
Construction
happening, moving
items.
forward, yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
been a long time coming.
Okay, Fund 105, the Forest Timber Trust Fund. This is the fund that we do a little backwards. So the revenues that support the costs in this fund come from the state timber receipts off of the top. So the timber receipts come in, what we need in this fund comes out, and then it goes through the distribution formula to the county for the rest of our general fund and to the taxing districts. So we budget beginning with what we need for expenses. There are a couple of memberships and dues. There's the detail down below, and it's also in the narrative, the Oregon Timber Counties Coalition and the Council of Forest Trustland Counties memberships and dues. Any legal service, this is another legal services line item. Any legal services that the county needs to defend our interests in our county forest lands that the state manages come out of this fund. So all the Coho lawsuit funds, when we were at the table for the Lynn County lawsuit a couple years ago, all of those funds were coming out of this fund. I think that is it. Questions on the timber fund? Title III, Fund 106. So starting below the budget table, we currently have cash available that's unallocated. Let me back up. So Title III is funding that the county receives, and it comes in. We never know when it's come in. It just hits the treasurer's office, and it comes in 1, 2, maybe twice a year. It is funded through the Secure Rules Act, and it was way back when to offset some of the loss in federal timber receipts that we were receiving. So this funding can only go to 4 uses: activities under the Firewise Community Program with the intent of providing homeowners in fire-sensitive areas with education and assistance. This is the Firewise program that you may see, the yard debris program that our solid waste department and ODF partner together to offer to homeowners. Search and rescue and other emergency services, including firefighting and law enforcement on federal land, training costs associated with search and rescue on federal land, and the development of community wildfire protection plans. The 4th one's largely been done. So when we have money that we receive through Title III from the federal government, which we never know how much it's going to be, so these are projections, there's this whole convoluted process of advertising applications, public hearings, noticing, going before the board for obligating, coming back before the board to approve grants and then grant agreements. The only 2 entities that are really eligible for this is ODF and the Sheriff's Office for their search and rescue programs. So that's what the uses are. We currently have 75,000 that is unallocated in current grants available, and we're advertising it right now for a grant round. With that assumption, new revenues that we're hoping to receive from the federal government before the end of the fiscal year, and the sale of the Sheriff's Office Raptor that was purchased with Title III funds. They've sold it. They now have a new one that they've acquired with other Title III money. The proceeds from that sale are going back into this fund, and we will have another grant round next year. But long story short, with those projected revenues, existing money we have for grants, and what I expect to be spent from existing grants, I'm getting a projected beginning fund balance of 67.9. So I know that may be a little confusing, so stop me if you need clarification, please. Next year, anticipating $60,000 in new revenues, and then it just keeps going. As we get revenues, we have grants. Questions on Title III?
Keep going.
I'm going, Doug. ARPA, Fund 196. And you'll need to look at the narrative here because it has the detail of the projects. So ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, was federal financial aid that a lot of the entities received during COVID to help with costs and impacts from COVID. We received a couple of distributions beginning in 2021. We have a lot of discretion on how we can use ARPA money, and we took full advantage of that. As soon as we received the money and we were in the middle of COVID, there were what we called urgent projects. So we rallied together our county leaders. What do we need right now to impact what you're doing? There was a lot of Wi-Fi projects, purchasing laptops. Sheriff's office needed some equipment dealing with what they were doing with COVID protocols at the jail. So we rolled out some projects there, and then we took a breath and we worked with Eco Northwest to develop a competitive process that county leadership put forth and we put forth to the community, and then it went through this ranking process, and out the other side came community project, a handful of community projects that were funded and a lot of county projects that were funded. So as it's been several years now, as those projects have wound down or they've come in over or under budget, what is before you today is where we are. And so we have contracted services projects and we have projects in capital outlay. Where you see a project that has new behind it is Rachel's recommendation of how to spend what we have left in ARPA. So in contracted services, you'll see a couple of projects that are outstanding that don't have new. Those are still on the books and those need to be spent. And we are also nearing the end of our ARPA term. Projects need to be allocated, which I'm told need to have a contract associated with them by the end of this year, this calendar year in December. And then all the ARPA money needs to be spent by the end of 2026. And I think we're doing a fine job at that, but just we're starting to push up against some timelines. So we have about $665,000 today that I project is unallocated in ARPA. So the new projects that you see tagged in the contracted services narrative and the capital outlay narrative are projects that I know we need funding for, and I've talked with the commissioners in the treasurer's office about it, and they generally make sense. They are up for discussion. Court security, in COVID, we hired the services of a court security firm to man the front door, and that's working great. There has never been a general fund line item for that. It's not paid out of the sheriff's office. It's always come out of ARPA. So I'm suggesting we kick that can down the road a little longer and push this out as far as we can. And so budgeting for their services takes us through what's the date here? I think it's January 31st of 26. So that would cover our court security needs. Global Grant Services is a grant writing team that we've been using to tap into funding that staff doesn't have time to write and manage grants for. I have funding allocated toward the radio system campaign and outreach, and we'll get into more of that when I'm talking about the radio project. The county is undergoing a strategic planning process now that will be concluded by summer. I anticipate additional efforts that will be needed to implement that, and we may or may not need a consultant. I've put $30,000 there. And then lastly, a county project manager. I've talked to the commissioners about having a contracted project manager. I do a lot of project management. And there's a lot of projects that we're not doing that I don't have time to do. And I love doing it, but there's other things that I could be doing that are not project management that would also be a benefit to the county. There's a lot of thought that needs to go into this still conceptually. I think it could be great. Not ready to run out and hire a contractor yet to do this, but it's a bit of a placeholder there for further discussion if the concept is interested, if the commissioners think that that's of interest. Moving on to capital outlay. Supporting the purchase of the property, the BLM property for the circuit court and district attorney facilities. That's a whole other discussion when we get to the county annex fund. Some of this is already budgeted, and adding from the balance of unallocated ARPA to what's already budgeted for this project would increase it to about $1 million. And then all the other capital outlay projects are existing projects. So I know that was a mouthful. I don't know how much you want to talk about ARPA and projects, but these would be my initial recommendations on how to spend what I think we have left for ARPA.
Well, let me ask, see if I can summarize this. ARPA is a one-time that came about simply because of COVID. And it was a lot of money that was spread across America. And this is what's been done and what's left. And my opinion is it's been used properly and per the intent of Congress. And I mean, you can argue that, I suppose, all day long, but nonetheless, it was money and it was put to good use, and there's some left, and some of it may be helpful in taking care of our court facility needs. So anybody else want to elaborate on ARPA? And then I'll ask the three over here if you've got a grasp on what we're talking about. I mean, Rachel, if Rachel gets run over by a bus, we're in trouble because she knows all this stuff. Yes. So, and any comments on ARPA?
No, I think you covered it. We made good use of it, and it's time limited. We need to decide how to spend what's left.
Yeah, agree. And we've worked hard to try to keep it to one-time things for the most part. I think court security is the one of those where it is a kicking the can down the road. However, we're also looking for the court facility solution, which would change the court security solution in the future as well. So there is a bit of a, I don't know, say a good reason to kick the can down the road, because there's just never a good reason to kick the can down the road. But it is I would say it's kind of interconnected to another thing, another project that we're working on a solution for. I would just speak quickly to the county project manager. Part of the work that I've been doing in partnership with Rachel and some of our community partners is to bring funding into the community to deal with issues out in the community. And we have acted as the federal grantee. So we received recently $1 million for opioid response work in the community, and it's coming to the county, with the county being the financial backbone for that. There is money to pay somebody to do that management, but instead we have Rachel doing it. So I think there are a number of projects and pieces where we're going out seeking funding. When that funding comes, it comes with money to pay somebody, i.e. a project manager. And we could get more done in terms of county efficiency and effectiveness, such as the contracting procedures that Rachel has been waiting 9 years to be exact, to get into and to update for us. But we have her doing special projects. The Kiwanda Corridor is another example. She is an amazing project manager, so she gets pulled in and we have her do that. That funding could pay for someone to do that work, and Rachel could be doing the work that she really should be doing as our chief of staff. So I think, the scary part is always, what if we don't get a project for a couple of years? How would we pay for that person? So the ARPA funding gives us an opportunity to try it and see how it goes, to determine if we have a consistent flow of special projects. So I think, these are things that are intended to make the county operate in a better way, that being one of them.
Question. Is the $50,000 for the project manager, is that, I think you'd be hard pressed to hire someone
Contract.
for-
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. which also gives us the flexibility in a year if we didn't have significant extra projects, you would have a smaller contract on that basis.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along, broadband, Fund 312. Yes, I am out of order.
Oh,
Okay, wait, I can go in order. I was trying to avoid the long conversations till the end, but.
I was so appreciating the order.
Okay, that's a perfect segue to the annex project. So I know we are running long, but I think this project warrants some history for the budget committee. And so if you'll indulge me, or if you think it's appropriate, I'd like to read, commissioners, the intro that I did during the meeting when you approved the task force proposal, just the first part of it to give some history. There's a great deal of history in this annex project, and we shouldn't really call it an annex project at this point, but that's what the fund is called from last year. So I'll read directly from my notes during the January 23rd meeting this year, when I was asking for the board's approval to proceed with an application to the Association of Oregon Counties, Oregon and Oregon Judicial Department's Task Force for Court Facilities. Basically, this is the group that you go to recommend funding, to get a funding recommendation for your court facility upgrades, and then it goes to the state for approval. So ORS 1.185 states that the county in which a circuit court is located or holds court shall provide suitable and sufficient courtrooms, offices, and jury rooms for the court, the judges, other officers, and employees of the court, and juries in attendance upon the court, and provide maintenance and utilities for those courtrooms, offices, and jury rooms. The Tillamook County Courthouse was built in 1932 and is ranked 4th worst in the state according to the 2008 Oregon Court Facilities Assessment commissioned by the state's Interim Committee on Court Facilities. So it's the 45th worst courthouse in the state. For decades, the county has attempted to solve courthouse security, space, ADA, and seismic issues. I've spent a considerable amount of time and have been involved in numerous attempts, all which have resulted in only minor remodeling to mitigate an urgent need or dead ends due to budget or political reasons. The most recent attempt to resolve these courthouse issues came to a halt during the 2023 budget hearings. Prior to that, lengthy board deliberations occurred in 2021. After giving another run at exploring solutions, the board affirmed that it wanted to invest in the courthouse. It was not cost effective to abandon the courthouse and start new here or elsewhere. More space was needed, and the courthouse should provide safe, efficient, and pleasant spaces for employees to work and visitors to visit. Those deliberations resulted in the board's decision to proceed at that time with a 3-phase project that involved courthouse remodeling, and that was the meeting room swap. So the commissioners used to meet upstairs in meeting room A, and this used to be courtroom 108. We remodeled both to give more room to more of an urgent need of circuit court. And then we also remodeled downstairs to provide for a jury assembly. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is a county annex. At that time, and you may have heard about this at last year's budget hearings, was constructing a county annex that would move the Board of Commissioners office to an annex adjacent to the museum. And you heard Peyton talk a little bit about the annex at the museum. It would have also supported museum function, or an annex on the south lawn. Moving the Board of Commissioners out to an annex would allow circuit court to expand into those offices to continue to meet our court security and courtroom needs. And then after they were moved into there, we could come back to the courthouse and look at ADA, seismic, larger renovations on a longer term manner. So we completed the remodeling, and then it came to a halt during the budget hearings. So during the budget hearings, the 1.8 million that was allocated to go to the annex was cut from the budget and reallocated to other county needs, and effectively halted the project due to lack of the board support and matching funds from the state, because we had a state task force asking at that time. That funding wasn't allocated because the project halted and we didn't have anybody lobbying for it at the state level. So fast forward to this January, where I'm making this presentation. there's the opportunity to reapply for state money. And what really kickstarted it again was the opportunity to pursue the BLM property. And so that property is 3 acres. It has a 13,000 square foot building. We are currently in negotiations with the owner to acquire it. It would allow us to move all of circuit court and the district attorney out of the courthouse and into a new remodeled facility. It solves a lot of issues, which we don't need to go into today, but it really checks all the boxes, but it's a very expensive project. And so what you see in your budget is that project. Moving circuit court and the district attorney to the BLM project. It's about early estimates, or very preliminary estimates. We're thinking maybe upwards of $12 million. And that's purchase, engineering, and the remodel costs. And we're looking at a combination of general fund dollars and state dollars and any other grant funding that we can realize. So that's the larger project, but what's in the budget is this fiscal year. So you don't see $12 million in this budget ask, but it's obviously a step in that direction of a commitment for the $12 million project, which is really important to recognize here on a philosophical level. So what is built into the state grants is the $1 million. That is our ask before the state that is pending. And that is in the process. It's a process that starts early. It's for the next legislative session. Loan proceeds, I don't fully understand how all this works, but if we purchase the property, one of the proposals is that it would be financed. And so the loan proceeds would, to purchase the property, which would be in this fiscal year, would come from a loan, but the payment would be made from the general fund.
Similar to the jail levy or jail roof, when we finance that when it's paid out of the general fund.
The contracted services here is for the design work on the remodel. And under, scroll down below the budget table. We have 995,000 in the ARPA budget. So the budget we just talked about, there is funding in there. We have started spending on a little bit, going through this property negotiation. So the budget before you today is purchase and engineering costs split between the general fund, whether that's cash we want to spend now or a financing option, which is yet to be determined because we don't even have a purchase and sale agreement yet with the owner. So that still needs to be determined, and state funding. I know this is confusing because you're taking this large project and you're just looking at it through just a fiscal year scenario, and there's a lot of assumptions and high level estimates in what the budget may be and what a purchase price may be, which is still being negotiated.
If the purchase were to go through this fiscal year, you'd be hearing from me about a supplemental budget to adopt it.
There is no way that will happen.
Just
Yeah.
throwing that up.
Time-wise, that is not possible. This would be next fiscal year.
So do you folks know what we're talking about on the BLM property? Okay.
And you probably already know, but maybe not, that the county is legally obligated to provide safe and adequate court facilities. So that they're currently not adequate, that there isn't enough space, and there are certain elements of our current configuration that may not be safe.
And it has been kicked down the road for years and years and years. So, I mean, this is one, there was a solution, Rachel it has a whole history of it, but there was a solution at one time to build a brand new court facility out on the property by the justice facility. And that was $25 million to do that. And that was 10 years or more ago. So you can imagine what it would be like to consider building an entire new facility today. That price would be absolutely astronomical. So we are just trying to solve this problem because the problem simply gets worse each year as the court systems in the state of Oregon add more requirements to our courts, which is a good thing. They're adding release officers and different things to try to really help people coming out of the court system be more successful, but it means they need more offices. They're adding specialty courts, which means they need more courtrooms. I mean, that just keeps growing. So what we are required to offer keeps growing. And so we are now at a point where this building is packed and trying to have the court meet their needs without adding additional square footage somewhere, whether it's to kick us out or whether it's to kick them out, somebody's gonna have to go. So this currently is what appears to be the most cost-effective solution that has come across our plate. So we're walking down that road.
Has there been any preliminary assessments on this building? I mean, how old is it? Is it something we can just come in and remodel, or does it 13,000 square feet I mean, does it need new roof, new siding? What's the status of that building? Do we even know that?
We don't have documentation because we haven't done any of that yet because I can't say a whole lot. We're still negotiating, trying to get to a purchase and sale agreement. If we got to a purchase and sale agreement, we would do all of that.
Right.
What we do know is it was built in the 90s and it appears to be very well kept up.
Got it. Okay.
So we're thinking we have a good shell to work with,
Got it.
but it's got a big warehouse in the back. It's got a big cooler that's going to be removed. It's a big open area with cubbies. So we think we have a great shell.
Okay, that's the answer.
Yeah.
It's also across from the county fairground, so if you had a large jury assembly, there's extra parking there. There's actually quite a bit of parking on site too. So given all the variables, it seems like a very realistic option. And keep in mind that, as she pointed out, we're 45th out of 48 courthouses in Oregon in terms of diminished quality. And eventually I could see personally, and I don't have any real insight, but I could see the state judicial department saying, you guys get your act together, we're going to force you to do this, or they could land on us with both feet maybe, because you know, the courts have quite a bit of power and influence, and they can get the legislature to say, you guys figure out how to pay it, or, you know, do something else and get it done. Because the courts have rights, and the people that go through the court system certainly have rights. And so, you know, there's not a easy way forward in my judgment. It's just simply there. And I remember the two discussions well, and the one that was mentioned out by the jail, and then the one right here. Neither of those came to any kind of closure, probably for financial reasons. And the one out by the jail, our part of it, we were only like $1 million or something short at the time, which isn't very much in the big picture.
Doug, the one that we were $1 million short was the annex here, not the one at the jail.
Not the one at the
Yeah.
jail. Okay. Yeah, thank you. But anyway, it was, you know, it's always a financial decision, but this seems to me to be a very positive step forward, but then we shall see.
How much space does the VA and circuit court occupy now?
Oh, I don't know what the square footage is.
I didn't bring my notes with me. I can bring it after.
Less than 13,000, I'm guessing.
Yes, yes.
So why don't you just go out and get a bond for the whole shebang?
Well, first, and Rachel can help, first, we're still in negotiations. There's not anything firmed up, nor have any contingencies been satisfied. If you could bond that, you could certainly ask the voters, but there's also other things on the horizon, and we'll talk about like a radio system.
That's
you
why
know,
I asked the
There's
question.
only an appetite for so much, and so you prioritize, is the radio system more important than this, or can we find an alternate for this? And I mean, I'm giving you my idea, they can speak for themselves as well, but to me, the radio maybe has a higher priority for any number of reasons. But you're quite right, you could bond this to the extent, you know, the voters said yes.
But it's just a concern to me to sort of do it piecemeal. If this, you know, you went out and borrowed, what is it, 3 million? Yeah, 2.3 million. And then what? Then where
Well,
do
then
you
you've
get,
gotta
where's
pay to
the other
build it
9,
up, and-
where's the other 9 million come from? And does it get put on permanent hold because you can't find the funding for
Well,
that?
that's a fair question, and I think that's a question, my personal opinion is there's ways to do that. You could bond it, you could get certificates of participation. There's a number of financial avenues for county government, which one would make the sense, and then the bigger question, how do you service the debt? You got to have the money from somewhere, and it's one of those things that, you know, what is a medium priority now by some definition could be an extremely high priority all of a sudden. And, you know, the consequences of, you know, there's only X amount of dollars on the table.
Right,
No.
and, you know, going to the public with the communication system and this right behind it might be a bit of a problem.
Yeah, and it could
So
be
the other part,
either way.
the-
Go ahead.
the other thing that makes this alternative very attractive, and we're talking about a lot of money, but it's the least amount of money to the county, is if we just do improvement projects, we're very limited on how much money we can get. So for this remodel, if we were going to build a county annex, we may be able to get $1 or $2 million. But if we build a court facility or remodel a facility, which this would be, we get 50% of match from the state.
That's why we're thinking about it.
Yes, I forgot to
Yeah.
mention that part. So that's a big part of our budget. So, I mean, preliminary numbers, I think 6 million, and we can use the property acquisition as that. So we're half into this instead of 12 million.
Whereas the solution we were working on last year, which was the annex that got sort of blown, miscommunicated, and what it was called last year was that commissioners were trying to build themselves a new Taj Mahal office. That was never what we were doing. We thought the solution we were working on last year was if we build an annex across the street on the Pioneer Museum property, then, and moved ourselves over there, we could have given up our space to the court and it could have solved their problem. However, that might have worked, but we wouldn't be eligible for a 50% match for that. The 50% match from the state only comes if we're building new court facilities, not an office for commissioners.
Well, I like that 50%. That's, as you know, what we did at the college too. So
Yeah.
that's, I'm glad you mentioned that. That makes kind of a big difference.
You know, like they say, if there were an easy solution, it already would have been done.
Yeah.
People keep saying that, and this is a tough one.
And we have to keep planning for it because the need grows. We have to keep planning for it, but the financial constraints are also grow, so.
But we're a little past our lunch hour.
In the back, Doug.
What?
The food is here.
I see that. So what, do you have much more to keep going on
I
this
have
one?
2 more and they should be very quick.
All right, let's
Yeah,
do those.
I'll just go through the quick. Radio 311. Since 2019, the county's been working with all the radio user groups to go through a process to upgrade our countywide public safety radio communication system. So this is the system that all first responders depend on. Think of handhelds, think of 911, think of mountaintop repeaters. It's the whole system. It's over 20 years old. It needs upgraded. We're going to go through we're going to transition it to more of a digital system. The current system lacks countywide coverage and reliability. As you can imagine, there's lots of dead spots just with cellular. So imagine what first responders are dealing with. It won't solve all of that, but it will certainly be a huge improvement in our coverage. We've commissioned a needs analysis site assessment and we have a preferred concept. So we know what we want to do. We know it costs an estimated $27 million for a 25-27 design build. So this would be online in fall of 2027 if we can move at the pace we'd like to. We've received a $2 million federal appropriation through what's called the COPS funding. That's an acronym that helps begin to offset that 27 million. We continue to look for grant funding everywhere. There's not as many opportunities that you would think. There used to be more, but I'm seeing that it's transitioning more to broadband. But there's still a couple out there, but they're just not large amounts of money. We're still seeking them. At the end of the day, the commissioners have approved going to the voters for a general obligation bond. So on the ballot in November will be an estimated $25 million general obligation bond. We're starting that process right now. And so what you see for the budget is the federal grant. We do have that secured. That's the $2 million that will go toward construction. And then that's all you see in this budget. What you see in my budget below the county budget form is a better snapshot of what we're doing for the project this year, which is coming from other funding. So there's some ARPA funding that's secured that came out of the competitive round. If you notice the new radio campaign project funding, when we went through the ARPA project, that's built in here. So we're in a campaign outreach mode and just starting to get the project rolling. There's still some technical questions. There's still some work we're doing with the user group, but that's where we are from now until November. And so this budget is a placeholder for the construction grant that we have, and then other activities for radio or in other budgets that we've already talked about.
Does it require any new facilities? Do you have the facilities put there?
It's a mix.
No, you do need new facilities.
Yes.
for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not for the dispatch.
No, for the
They'll
radios,
be used-
there are 12 radio towers in Tillamook County, and they're shared with state police and local police and fire, even amateur radio and a lot of others. And so there's a lot of equipment would go up there, the transmitter types. The towers are in pretty good shape. But there'd be a lot of mobile and handheld that would go into police vehicles and fire vehicles and public works vehicles and all of that. And then the whole system would be interoperable, so one can talk to another, and things that can't be done technically now are not done very easily. So, and there would also be much better coverage. And fortunately, or unfortunately, if you're a radio person, we got a lot of hills and valleys. And on a VHF system, it's essentially line of sight. And so it needs a little more power, and digital transmits better than analog. And I mean, lots of technical things, but it does not require a new building. It doesn't require anything more than a lot of equipment to go in sites we already own, I think.
Dispatch is done through 911 in this county, which is a
Yeah.
special district of its own.
And it's
So
right-
we don't
right
do
across the
dispatch.
street.
It's across the street over here.
Got it.
There will be new equipment and facilities at 911.
Mhm.
Right.
They are part of our system.
That was my
So
question.
Yes.
Thank you.
there are.
Thank you.
And as of the moment, that's scheduled to go before the voters on the November ballot. And that's why I said earlier, if you put bonding on there, people may throw up their arms and say, hey, that's way too much for everything. I mean, there's some strategy in how you do that, but we'll have to work through all that.
Strategy and a bond, I think if the commissioners wanted to go for a bond, would probably be for the remodel part of it. Because for the purchase, we're only talking about a couple $1 million, which we have cash for a chunk of it. And we could probably figure out how to do a short-term loan or some other pulling a piece out of the general fund, I don't know, to get the purchase part figured out. But then the construction, and we're looking at a 2029 move-in if everything goes as planned
Got it.
because of the state funding.
Got it.
So it's a very long-term project and our costs would be spread out. So there's a lot of time to go for a bond that would be that would be far enough away from the radio if we wanted to have two bonds out there, which there's still gonna be two bonds out there. Yeah. They'll still have their tax statement in front of them. They'll still see it. Oh, one more broadband. So Fund 312, this is just a pass-through fund. As we're a member of Tillamook Lightwave, working on broadband efforts. We've received $3 million in FY23 appropriations and $1 million in FY24 appropriations. This budget has those revenues coming in and going right out to Tillamook Lightwave. The first $3 million, or the $3 million, is for phase 1 along. It's called Three Rivers, but it basically goes out Highway 22. It's 3 miles along Highway 22. I'm sorry, it's 13.1 miles, and it would ultimately serve 299 homes. We are not connecting to the home, but it would serve as the backbone that other providers could then tap off of and serve 299 homes. Phase 2, which is the $1 million ask, we actually asked for more, and the full request we asked for would have served another 332 homes and would have gone along another 7 miles, but we only got 1 million. So there will be a reduction there. I just don't know exactly what that is. So the great news is we have $4 million for broadband that will be coming from the federal government through the county to Tillamook Lightwave. Our FY23, the first amount of money we asked for in 22, in calendar year 22, I still do not have that money in hand. So I don't know when this will, you might be seeing this for several years. It's a very long process. It's pretty astonishing, actually. That is a pass-through fund.
We're hopeful because continuing resolutions do not include these community directed spending projects. And so the fact that there was actually a federal budget passed instead of a continuing resolution gives us hope that this funding might actually show up in some form of real time. So
And the reason, part of the reason this is in the budget now is you need the spending authority to do it. If for some reason things came together more quickly, then you could start spending that amount of money now. So where are we? Is that it, Rachel, for you?
Yeah, next that I'm a part of is the Facilities and the Building Improvement Fund, which talks about the facilities condition assessment. I know Kevin's been on, but I would recommend we take the lunch break and then hit
Thank
that
you.
after.
Yeah, why don't we do that? We can take in the 12 o'clock item, we can move and do that first at 1:30. That probably won't take long and we can stay on scale and then schedule. And then these other things this afternoon, just for the budget committee, it gets pretty interesting. Public Works will come in and show you stuff, you know, holes in the ground and stuff like that. So
he's good with
it gets
pictures.
more interesting than some of this if you're ready to doze off. So then I think if everybody's okay, we'll take a recess and come back together about 1:30. Are we good? Okay. Lunchtime.
They had the gavel there, Doug.
Yeah, I do.